You walk up to the ATM, punch in your 4-digit PIN, grab your cash, walk away. 30 seconds later, someone points a $300 camera at that same keypad and your code lights up like a neon sign. Every button you touched glows bright, the order you pressed them written in heat. They have your PIN, they have your card number from a skimmer you never noticed. They have everything. This is not science fiction. This is happening right now. And the technology that makes it possible sits in millions of pockets worldwide. Because when thermal cameras were expensive and rare, thermal attacks stayed theoretical. Lab experiments, conference papers, now they are everywhere. And so is the threat. A thermal camera operating in the far infrared spectrum picks up that residual warmth. Software reads the pattern. The keys you pressed appear as bright spots. The most recent press stays hottest. The first press you made has cooled slightly. Order revealed. Code cracked. Game over. Also, comment from which city you are hearing this from. This script is researched and factual using sources from the University of California, San Diego's 2011 Usenix Security Symposium presentation titled Heat of the Moment, characterizing the efficacy of thermal camera-based attacks by Keaton Maury, Sarah Meiklejohn, and Stefan Savage, as well as the University of Glasgow's 2022 study published in ACM Transactions. On privacy and security, titled Thermosecure Investigating the Effectiveness of AI-Driven Thermal Attacks on Commonly Used Computer Keyboards, led by Dr. Mohammed Khamis with Nora Alataibi and Dr. John Williamson. These are peer-reviewed academic sources with hard data from controlled experiments involving real subjects, real keypads, and real thermal cameras. Now back to the information. Security researcher Michal Zalewski publishes findings on cracking safes with thermal imaging. He points an infrared camera at a keypad safe after someone enters the combination. 5 minutes after the code was entered, he can still see which buttons were pressed. The thermal trace persists. Zalewski describes detection from as far as 10 meters away. No close access required. No dust powder, no physical evidence left behind. Just aim and read. The security community takes notice, but thermal cameras at that time cost $18,000 to buy, or $2,000 a month to rent. The attack remains academic, interesting but impractical for street-level crime. Sarah Meiklejohn, also a graduate student. Professor Stefan Savage. They automate Zalewski's technique and test it on ATM keypads. 21 volunteers, 27 randomly selected 4-digit pins, 2 types of keypads tested, 1 plastic, 1 brushed metal. The thermal camera they use retails for approximately $18,000, high-end professional equipment. Visual inspection by humans recovers the correct digits 20 to 30% of the time. Automated computer analysis jumps that figure to approximately 50%. Immediately after entry, more than 80% success rate. 90 seconds after entry, the chance drops to about 20%. Each key press adds 2 to 4 degrees Celsius to the button surface. Heat dissipates over 20 to 40 seconds, but enough signal remains for extraction. Metal keypads tell a different story. High thermal conductivity spreads heat across the entire surface almost instantly. The camera shows the thermal reflection of the camera operator rather than the keys themselves. Metal defeats the attack. Plastic does not. The software analyzes thermal images, identifies which buttons show elevated temperature, estimates the order based on relative heat intensity. Brighter equals more recent, dimmer equals older press. If the pin contains no repeated digits, the software extracts the complete code in one attempt. Repeated digits complicate order determination, but still narrow possibilities dramatically. A 4-digit pin with all unique numbers has 24 possible permutations. Thermal imaging eliminates 23 of them instantly. But Mowry and colleagues prove the concept works. They document it. They publish it. The vulnerability now sits in the open literature, waiting for technology costs to drop. It provides 80 by 60 thermal resolution, temperature range -20 to 120 Celsius, battery life 1 hour. Target market includes home inspectors, HVAC technicians, electricians, and DIY enthusiasts looking for air leaks or hot circuits. But the same device that finds a drafty window also reads keypad heat signatures. FLIR does not advertise that capability. They do not need to. The physics works regardless of intent. By 2022, thermal cameras smaller than a deck of cards attached to smartphones via Lightning or USB-C connectors for $150 to $300 depending on model and resolution. Brands like Seek Thermal Hickman grow. Thermal Master and others flood the consumer market. Resolution improves, sensitivity increases. Some models detect temperature differences as small as 0.04 degrees Celsius. Frame rates hit 30 Hz, allowing real-time video. The barriers to entry vanish. If you own a smartphone and $200, you own a thermal attack platform. An artificial intelligence-driven system that does not just detect heat traces, it reads passwords. Full alphanumeric passwords on standard computer keyboards, with frightening accuracy. Keys recently pressed glow warmer than untouched keys. The AI learns to distinguish keyboard layouts and thermal images. It applies a skeleton overlay to detected keyboards. It extracts which specific keys were pressed. Then, it determines the order using probabilistic modeling based on relative heat intensity. 6 symbols, 8 symbols, 12 symbols, 16 symbols. Thermal images captured at different intervals after typing. Results shock even the researchers. When thermal images are taken within 20 seconds of password entry, ThermoSecure cracks 86% of passwords. Within 30 seconds, 76%. After 60 seconds, 62% still fall. 6 symbol passwords cracked 100% of the time within 20 seconds. 8 symbol passwords, 93%. 12 symbol passwords, 82%. Even 16 symbol passwords fall 67% of the time if the thermal image captures within 20 seconds. The AI sees patterns humans miss. It extracts information from noise. It turns blurry heat maps into precise keystroke sequences. Typing style affects vulnerability significantly. Hunt and Peck typists, who search for each key and hold fingers down longer, leave heat signatures that persist. ThermoSecure successfully attacks 92% of Hunt and Peck typist passwords when images are taken within 30 seconds. Touch typists who type fast with brief key contact generate weaker signatures. Attack success against touch typists drops to 80%. Still alarmingly high, but the difference proves measurable. Slow typers are easier targets. Attack accuracy on PBT keyboards plummets to 14%. Material choice matters enormously. But most users never think about keycap composition when buying a keyboard. Dr. Cummins states clearly it is very likely that people around the world are developing systems along similar lines to ThermoSecure in order to steal passwords. This is not a future threat. It is happening now. The technology exists. The knowledge is public. The only question is how many attackers have weaponized it. On office door locks in Mumbai, on payment terminals in London, on smartphone screens in Seoul, on laptop keyboards in Sao Paulo. Geography means nothing when the physics applies everywhere. A thermal camera in Teresina, Brazil, sees heat signatures exactly the same as one in New York. The vulnerability is universal. Employees logging into shared workstations, customers at point-of-sale terminals, bank customers at ATMs, hotel guests using electronic key safes, property managers accessing lockboxes. The list extends to any scenario where someone enters sensitive numeric or alphanumeric codes on physical interfaces that others can access shortly afterward. Does not need to see the PIN being entered. Waits 30 seconds after the customer walks away. Approaches the ATM with a smartphone thermal camera concealed in a bag or pocket, points the camera at the keypad for 2 seconds, captures thermal image, walks away. Later reviews the image, determines which numbers were pressed, narrows a 4-digit PIN from 10,000 possibilities down to 24 or fewer. Combines with card skimmer data collected earlier, clones the card, drains the account. The customer never knows what happened until the money disappears. No alarms, just walk in. Security cameras see someone pointing a phone at the wall. Looks like they are texting, nothing suspicious. By the time security reviews footage, the attacker already copied files or planted malware or photographed sensitive documents. Thermal trace enabled entry. Attacker gains physical access to outer building through social engineering. Waits near server room door. IT administrator enters after hours, maintenance call. Types code, enters room. Attacker waits 90 seconds. Quick thermal photo of keypad. Code recovered. Attacker also has stolen RFID badge from earlier pickpocket or tailgating incident. 2-factor authentication defeated. Server room breached. Sensitive data, including customer information, credit card numbers, medical records, sits unprotected. 1 thermal image opened the door. None of that matters. The heat signature remains after your hand moves away. Traditional camera skimming requires capturing the moment of entry. Thermal attacks work retroactively. Time advantage belongs to the attacker. After 2 minutes, chances of full recovery drop to single digits. Speed matters. Attackers must move fast. They need access to the keypad within 1 minute, ideally within 30 seconds. That creates exposure. Witnesses may notice someone approaching a keypad immediately after another user. Surveillance cameras may capture the sequence, but in crowded locations like airport terminals or shopping mall ATMs, that window of suspicion closes quickly. Material choice provides defense. Metal keypads defeat thermal attacks almost completely. Stainless steel brushed aluminum copper all spread heat so fast the attack fails. The UC San Diego study demonstrated this conclusively. Metal keypads showed thermal reflections of the camera operator, not the keys pressed. High thermal conductivity equals high security. Why do most keypads use plastic then? Cost? Plastic costs less, weighs less, easier to manufacture, but security pays the price. Security requires conscious effort most people do not exert in daily transactions. Education could change this, but mass behavioral change moves slowly. Using a stylus or pen tip instead of fingers also works. Plastic stylus transfers negligible heat compared to fingertips. Many touchscreen devices ship with styluses for exactly this reason. But keypads with mechanical buttons require more pressure. Pen tips may not reliably trigger presses. User experience suffers. Adoption remains minimal. Scrambling keypads randomize number positions for each transaction. Number 1 appears in different locations each time. Thermal imaging shows which positions were pressed, but not which numbers. The attack breaks down. Scrambling keypads exist but cost more. Banks and businesses resist the upgrade expense, especially when plastic-fixed keypads already work. Until regulations mandate scrambling, widespread adoption stays unlikely. Some systems now heat the entire keypad slightly to mask individual presses. Raising all keys to 35 degrees Celsius reduces contrast between pressed and unpressed keys. Signatures still exist, but become much harder to extract, especially for AI systems trained on high-contrast images. This requires powered heating elements, more complexity, more cost, more failure points. But security improvement justifies the investment in high-value contexts. This requires widespread manufacturer cooperation, not likely without regulation. And standalone thermal cameras without computing power connected cannot implement this solution. Their framework can eliminate authentication information from thermal images while still allowing legitimate thermal camera use. Security without completely disabling the device. But again, this requires camera manufacturers to adopt the technology. That adoption lag creates a window where attacks outpace defenses. Thermal cameras serve legitimate purposes: building inspection, electrical troubleshooting, search and rescue, medical diagnostics, wildlife observation, firefighting, industrial maintenance. Banning thermal cameras would cripple industries that depend on them. Regulating them creates enforcement nightmares. How do you prevent malicious use without blocking legitimate use? The technology itself remains neutral. Intent determines outcome. The password death argument gains strength from thermal attack research. If passwords typed on physical keyboards remain vulnerable to thermal imaging, why use passwords at all? Biometric authentication, like fingerprint readers or facial recognition, does not leave heat traces. You cannot thermally image what was never typed. Hardware security keys like YubiKey or Titan authenticate without password entry. Tap the key and authenticate. No thermal signature to steal. Passwordless systems eliminate entire categories of attacks, including thermal imaging. Thermal attacks represent one threat vector among dozens. Removing passwords may strengthen security against thermal imaging while weakening it against physical theft of authentication devices. Very expensive and faces user resistance. Accept the risk and rely on other security layers. Cheapest, but leaves exposure. No single solution fits every context. Upgrading home security hardware costs hundreds to thousands of dollars. Most people will not spend that money to defend against an attack they have never heard of. 2014 thermal cameras hit consumer market, but manual analysis remains difficult. 2022, AI automates analysis, turning any smartphone into attack platform. 2025, widely deployed, cheap, accurate, and mostly unknown to potential victims. The threat matured faster than defenses. Cost-benefit analysis often favors accepting fraud losses over hardware upgrades, especially when customers rarely report thermal attacks because they do not recognize them. A customer who loses money from their account assumes their card was skimmed or their PIN guessed through shoulder surfing. They do not think thermal camera. Banks see standard fraud patterns. No red flags trigger investigation. The attack stays invisible in the data. Law enforcement faces challenges. Thermal attacks leave no physical evidence. Surveillance cameras may capture someone pointing a phone, but that action is not suspicious. Proving criminal intent requires catching the attacker with both thermal images and stolen data. That happens rarely. Most cases never get reported. Most cybersecurity insurance covers network breaches, malware, ransomware, but does not explicitly address thermal attacks. Coverage gaps exist. Organizations suffering losses from thermal attack-enabled breaches may find their claims denied. Policy language written years ago does not contemplate thermal imaging as an attack vector. Updating policies requires industry recognition of the threat. That recognition lags behind reality. Academic research continues. Universities worldwide study thermal attacks. New papers published every year. Detection methods improve. Attack methods also improve. The cat and mouse game continues. Each defensive innovation spawns countermeasure research. Each attack innovation spawns defensive research. Neither side wins permanently. Security remains a process, not a destination. Heat transfers from warm objects to cooler objects. Human fingertips at 37 degrees Celsius touch plastic keys at 23 degrees Celsius. Heat moves from finger to key. Thermal cameras detect that heat. No amount of software or policy changes the physics. Defense must work within physical constraints, change materials, change timing, change interfaces. But the heat transfer itself cannot be eliminated without eliminating touch interfaces entirely. Gesture-based authentication, using cameras that track hand movements, avoid keypads entirely. Wave your hand in specific patterns. Camera reads, motion, no physical contact, no heat signature. But gesture systems require line of sight, cameras, processing power, calibration. They fail in dark environments or when cameras are obscured, complexity increases. Pressure variations, rhythm patterns. Even if thermal imaging reveals which keys you pressed, it does not reveal your unique typing cadence. Systems that authenticate based on typing behavior add a second factor that thermal attacks cannot defeat. But these systems require training periods, false rejection rates, user frustration when legitimate users fail authentication. Combining something, like a pin with something you have, like a card or phone, creates redundancy. Thermal attacks may compromise the knowledge factor, but the possession factor remains secure, unless the attacker also steals your phone or card, which happens, especially when attackers target specific individuals. Thermal attack on pin, pickpocket the card, two factors defeated. Multi-factor helps, but is not foolproof. The research community agrees on one thing. Thermal attacks represent a serious, under-recognized threat that will grow as technology spreads. Dr. Cummis and colleagues emphasize this in every paper and interview. The tools exist, the knowledge exists, the motivation exists, only awareness lags. Most people have never heard of thermal attacks. That ignorance leaves them defenseless. Education campaigns could help, but require funding and coordination. Who leads the effort? Government agencies, industry groups, consumer advocacy organizations, universities. Someone needs to tell the public about thermal attacks and how to defend against them. That message has not reached mainstream audiences. Articles appear in tech blogs and security forums. General population remains unaware. Your grandmother does not read cybersecurity research papers. She uses ATMs and has no idea her PIN glows on the keypad for a minute after she walks away. Windows of vulnerability will extend. Unless defensive measures keep pace, the advantage tilts toward attackers. Different threat, different defense needs. The story ends not with a solution, but with a warning. Every day, millions of people enter passwords and PINs on vulnerable interfaces. Every day, some of those credentials get stolen via thermal attacks. The victims do not know. The attackers leave no trace. The vulnerability persists. In the pockets of criminals, attached to drones flying overhead, mounted in security systems. The same technology that saves lives by finding people trapped in burning buildings also enables silent theft of digital credentials. Dual-use technology at its finest. Your phone screen retains heat signatures from unlock patterns and password entries. Someone with a thermal camera can photograph your phone screen within 30 seconds of you unlocking it and extract your unlock pattern or PIN. Your phone, the device you trust with your most sensitive data, vulnerable to the same attack as a public ATM keypad. Laptop keyboards, tablet screens, smart home control panels, car entertainment systems. Anything you touch with your fingers leaves thermal traces. Anything with thermal traces can be read. The attack surface is enormous and growing. Most importantly, they require you to know the threat exists. In 2025, a team at Cambridge discovered that thermal attack success rates correlate with humidity levels. Dry air allows heat signatures to persist longer. Humid air accelerates cooling. Your local climate affects your vulnerability. Desert environments high risk, tropical environments lower risk, but no environment eliminates the risk entirely. Physics applies everywhere, even if local conditions modify the timeline. The latest thermal camera models released in late 2024 include AI processing built into the camera itself. No smartphone required. Point and capture. The camera's internal processor runs password extraction algorithms in real time. Results displayed on the camera's screen within seconds. Stand near a keypad. Point the camera, read the PIN off the display, walk away. Entire attack completed in under 10 seconds. These cameras cost under $400. Available online, shipped worldwide, no restrictions. Anyone can buy one, because compromise will occur. The question is when, not if. Just a consumer device and publicly available software. The threat is global. It is happening now, and most victims will never know their credentials were stolen this way. Operating in the 7.5 to 13 micrometer wavelength range. Frame rate of 30 Hz. The device weighed several pounds and required dedicated power supply. Professional equipment by any measure. Weighs less than 4 ounces. Battery powered. Clips to any smartphone. Costs $214 retail. The performance gap narrowed. The price gap collapsed. Accessibility exploded. Thermal sensitivity improved to less than 0.04 degrees Celsius on consumer models. Professional grade sensitivity in pocket-sized packages. The technological progression followed predictable curves. Moore's law applied to infrared sensors, just as it did to visible light cameras. Each generation smaller, cheaper, better. Breakthrough. The Glasgow researchers used a convolutional neural network architecture. They trained it on 1,500 thermal images captured with an Optris PI 450i thermal camera. Each image showed a standard ISO QWERTY keyboard with ABS keycaps. Random keys pressed in each image creating varied heat patterns. images captured from different angles, distances, and timing intervals after the keys were pressed. The neural network architecture consisted of 3 main phases. Phase 1, detection. The system identifies the keyboard within the thermal image regardless of angle or distance, uses object detection algorithms to establish bounding coordinates, applies rotated bounding boxes to account for camera angle. This phase achieved 98% accuracy in detecting keyboards in cluttered thermal images. Once the keyboard is detected, the system overlays a virtual skeleton representing the standard QWERTY layout, maps each physical key to its logical position, accounts for minor variations in keyboard physical dimensions, uses blob detection to identify which specific keys show elevated temperature indicating recent presses. This phase correctly identified pressed keys 94% of the time when thermal images were captured within 30 seconds. Top candidate proved correct 86% of the time in best case scenarios within 20 seconds of entry. Multiple lighting conditions, room temperature variations from 18 to 25 degrees Celsius. The dataset captured real-world variability. ABS plastic retains thermal energy much longer due to lower thermal conductivity. Approximately 0.2 watts per meter Kelvin for ABS versus 0.3 for PBT. That difference translates to significantly extended signature persistence. 92% average across all materials and timing. 8 character passwords. 93% recovery within 20 seconds on ABS. 80% average. 12 character passwords. 82% within 20 seconds on ABS. 71% average. 16 character passwords. 67% within 20 seconds on ABS. 55% average. Hunt and Peck typing style analysis revealed significant vulnerability increase. Participants classified as Hunt and Peck averaged 4.2 seconds per character input. Touch typists averaged 1.1 seconds per character. Longer contact time per key produced stronger thermal signatures. The heat transfer equation explains this clearly. Q equals M times C times delta T, where Q is heat transferred, M is mass, C is specific heat capacity, and delta T is temperature change. Longer contact time increases heat transfer proportionately. Their mass thermal conductivity and ambient convection conditions. After 60 seconds, the signal-to-noise ratio drops below reliable extraction levels for most attack scenarios. 28 degrees Celsius. Lower ambient temperatures increase contrast, improving attack success. Humidity affects heat dissipation rates. High humidity increases convective cooling slightly, reducing signature persistence by 5 to 10%. But these effects modify timelines by seconds, not minutes. At 30% relative humidity, thermal signatures persisted for an average of 78 seconds on plastic keypads. At 70%, relative humidity persistence dropped to 61 seconds. The difference matters at the margins, but does not fundamentally change the attack window. Both scenarios provide ample opportunity for attackers operating with any sense of timing. Simple attacks on fixed position numeric keypads require minimal sophistication. Point camera, capture image, read which numbers glow, narrow possibilities. More advanced attacks on full QWERTY keyboards require software like thermosecure. But that software now exists. Multiple research teams have published similar tools. Some are available on GitHub, others sold commercially. The barrier to entry keeps dropping. Step 1, reconnaissance. Identify target with vulnerable keypads. Step 2, positioning. Establish position near target. Step 3, observation. Wait for legitimate user. Step 4, timing. Approach within optimal window. 30 seconds ideal. Step 5, capture. 2-second exposure. Step 6, analysis. Automated tools provide instant results. Step 7, exploitation. Combine with other stolen data. Banking sector losses from card fraud exceeded $32 billion globally in 2023. What percentage came from thermal attacks? Unknown. Banks do not track that metric. The losses hide in aggregate numbers. Victims never learn the mechanism. Pattern never identified. Find thermal camera in possessions. Find thermal images of keypads. Only then does investigation pursue thermal attack angle. Proactive detection remains non-existent. The regulatory challenge proved too complex. European Union privacy regulations do not specifically address thermal attacks. The regulations focus on data storage transmission. Thermal attacks happen before data enters systems. New frameworks would be needed. Most still do not. Claims get denied. The insurance gap persists. Corporate security training programs slowly incorporate thermal attack awareness. Fortune 500 companies started including scenarios in training around 2023. Small businesses lag behind. Most have never heard of thermal attacks. Published papers on thermal attacks numbered 3 in 2005, over 90 in 2023. The research community recognized the threat. Conference presentations, dedicated sessions to thermal attacks. The knowledge base grows exponentially, but academic knowledge does not equal public awareness. Scrambling models cost 3 to 5 times more than standard keypads. Metal keypads cost double. Most organizations choose standard plastic keypads because they cost less. The thermal attack threat does not rank high enough in risk assessments to justify premium spending. You can only control your behavior. Press random keys, place your palm, wear gloves when appropriate, type faster. These actions lie within user control. That democratization happened between 2015 and 2020. 5 years transformed the threat landscape completely. Laws will get written, defenses will improve. The research consensus points to multi-layered defense as the only practical approach. No single countermeasure solves thermal attacks completely. Combining multiple partial solutions creates acceptable risk levels. Metal keypads, plus scrambling, plus user behavior changes, plus multi-factor authentication. Redundancy, defense in depth. Classic security architecture applied to a modern threat. The timeline from academic discovery to mass awareness to defensive deployment typically spans 15 to 20 years in cybersecurity. Thermal attacks entered academic literature in 2005. Mass awareness should arrive around 2020 to 2025. Defensive deployment should reach maturity around 2030. We sit in the middle of that timeline now. The threat is known, awareness is building, defenses are emerging, but the gap remains. Thermal attacks opened their window around 2014 when consumer thermal cameras arrived. The window remains open today.